Singapore will tap on its past reserves for the second fiscal year in a row to pay for COVID-19 support measures. $11 billion more will be drawn for COVID-19 measures, taking the total up to $53.7 billion across the 2 years. Now, that's $1.7 billion more than what it was projected initially last year. And the country is prepared to dig even further into the kitty if it needs to. Brandon Tanotto with more.
The pandemic is now largely under control because of what Mr. Heng calls an effective response by citizens and businesses to adapt to the changing situation. It also means spending came in lower than expected in areas like public health. Only $42.7 billion was used out of the $52 billion set aside from the past reserves last year. But another $11 billion will still be needed for further COVID-19 measures. That's gotten the in-principle support from the President and brings the total draw to $53.7 billion over the 2 years.
This is the second consecutive financial year where we will be drawing on our past reserves. This is necessary, given the exceptional circumstances we are in. We are extremely fortunate to be able to tap on our strategic assets and deploy the resources required to deal decisively with COVID-19 and the considerable uncertainties that lie ahead. We should never take our reserves for granted.
The government's operating revenue is projected at $76.6 billion this financial year. An estimated $19.6 billion comes from investment returns on the reserves, taking the grand total to $96.2 billion. Meanwhile, overall spending is expected to be around $102.3 billion. Special transfers add on another $4.9 billion. These are for things such as GST vouchers and support local wages under the Job Support Scheme. All in, overall deficit for financial year 2021 is set to be about $11 billion, or 2.2% of GDP. It's much better than the $64.9 billion previously, when there was a lot more spending to tide over the COVID-19 crisis amid much less revenue. Mr. Heng warns that Singapore's fiscal situation will be tighter in the coming years. More spending for safety nets for the more disadvantaged and vulnerable will be needed because of COVID-19 uncertainties which may get worse. If that happens, further draws on the reserves may be needed.
Even if the economic and fiscal situation turns out to be worse than expected, we must still press on to invest in new areas so as to ride on the structural changes, transform and emerge stronger as an economy and as a people. Should the public health and economic situation deteriorate and the need arise, the government will seek the President's consideration for the use of past reserves to support these economic investments to ensure Singapore emerges stronger from this crisis.
Mr. Heng says the President has expressed her understanding towards this approach and will consider specific proposals should the time come.